Hello, my name is Raisa, and currently I'm working as a professor in the University of Cordoba and also as a researcher. Today, I'm going to introduce my proposal, which is called Visual Strategies and Regulatory Compliance of Indian Anti-Raging Campaigns at Amrita Vidyapeetham. But first of all, I want to thank the organization of the Congress to give me the opportunity to present my proposal. This proposal analyzes the institutional and visual campaign against raging, a hierarchical initiation right that transcends traditional bullying on a university campus in Kerala in February 2026. Given the severity of these practices, the University Grants Commission has imposed mandatory regulations aimed at curbing this threat, which institutions must implement in their entirety. Non-compliance with these guidelines leads to severe regulatory actions, including the withdrawal of grants and financial funding, as well as the public disclosure of the university's infraction. In this context of strong state pressure, the study applies a multimodal critical discourse analysis to a corpus consisting of 4 physical posters and the official reporting portal antiraging.in to explore the tension between the visual activism of the posters and the punitive bureaucratic nature of the digital system. The aim of my intervention is to analyze the institutional and visual campaign against raging in Amrita Vidyapeetham, a university campus in Kerala, India, in 2026 through the visual communication and the digital environment. And the specific objectives are to evaluate the campaign as an awareness tool, to compare the physical posters and the digital platform, and to identify the different perspectives on social hierarchy and the visual representations. The corpus is examined through multimodal discourse analysis (MDA), an approach which is focused on how texts and images are interrelated to create a discourse that communicates a message. This method becomes essential to reveal the intersemiotic relationships implied in figures, words, headlines, typography, and visual design in general. So this approach also takes into account culture as a vehicle of social transformation in academic context. There is a complex articulation between the visual language aimed at young people and a strict state bureaucratic control. Indeed, the posters found along Amrita campus share the same basic structure at the bottom side. There is an institutional band with a national help number and a QR code to download the official application and the logos of the Ministry of Education, the University Grants Commission, and the university itself. This band works as a mark of authority, which generates as a contact reminder that the campaign responds to a nationally mandated requirement compliance with which is compulsory for higher education institutions. In addition to complete the analysis, it is essential to examine the digital and bureaucratic infrastructure supporting the campaign within the official portal and the government notices that promote its implementation. If the campus posters represent the campaign visible with an aesthetic face, the website and official documents act as its tool for observation. Focusing on the visual elements of the first poster, the image depicts a single male figure looking down with the hands in his pockets with an expression of melancholy. The use of flat illustration and neutral colors removes the character of any piece of authority or power, portraying him as his most vulnerable moment after having committed the act. The text supports the image's meaning through a first-person thought. Foolishly irate, I got suspended. Notably, the discourse does not appeal to empathy for the victim, but rather to to the aggressor's self-interest, fear of losing his own status, with the quotes, "Will I get prosecuted? What about my job prospects? And the very question, my futures be?" Besides, the last question is accompanied by a large red question mark. Poster 1 evokes the institutional threat. The slogan, "Remember reading is for losers," end of the quote, inverts the traditional hierarchy of rating in which the aggressor is typically perceived as dominant, presenting him as the system's loser instead. The poster's effectiveness rests on the dissuasion through academic and penal fear, in the line with the UGC's strict guidelines aimed at eradicating this practice. The second poster shows a classic scene of power abuse in which four students are mocking, laughing, pointing, and even recording an isolated student sitting on the ground in a defensive posture. The poster is sharply divided between a surface-level message and a quote, "Say no to raging, yes to joyful campus," end of the quote, and an extensive yellow background table that functions as an accurate passage from the university's penal codes. And in the table, there is a classification of all types of sins: sexual, physical, and verbal abuse, and financial extortion, and also punishments are excessively listed. For example, cancellation of admission, withdrawal of scholarships, examinations bans, and collective punishment. So it is clear that this multimodal design depicts a dual morality campaign. While the illustration seeks to appeal for an end to harassment in the name of a joyful campus, the dense block of legal text below it reveals the true purpose of the communication. The university must publicly demonstrate that it informs students of penal consequences, so as to avoid non-compliance that could result in the revocation of funding or grants by the UGC. The third poster illustrates an aesthetic comic strip which shows four types of violence. We've got verbal aggression, social exclusion, singling out, and physical aggression. At the center, a large prohibition symbol of anti-raging manifests the scenes. The main text, and I quote, "Before you even think of raging," end of the quote, is framed by red boxes highlighting the words, and I quote, "suspension, humiliation, blacklisting, ruined career, and expulsion," end of the quote. And it also introduces a new discursive element by directly addressing the passive witness. And I quote, "Don't just stand and watch, some reading, show character," end of the quote. So in this case, this is the only poster that encourages collective action and witness intervention to break complicit silence. Nevertheless, the aesthetic of punitive red stamps reinforces the notion that the state's bureaucratic tool will permanently mark offenders. The inclusion of the word blacklisting is a micro-level reflection of what the UGC itself does at the macro level with universities, since institutions that fail to comply with regulations face public exposure of their uncooperative status. Finally, poster number 4 illustrates two smiling students and two professors in a relaxed posture, peacefully interacting while looking at their mobile phones. And it is very interesting because it is the first time that we see two of the pillars of the university, which are professors and students interacting with each other. The colors are warm and bright. The headline, and I quote, "Don't rag, just interact," end of the quote, proposes an alternative positive model of conduct. It means a constructive, let's say, message. However, It is immediately interrupted by a large red block with a megaphone warning, and I quote, "Raging in any form is punishable." End of the quote. So this poster perfectly illustrates the dichotomy of the heart of Kerala campaign. Although an image of normality and peaceful coexistence is being projected, the institution proves unable to sustain a purely positive message without introducing the threat of punishment. Indeed, the red megaphone acts as the voice of regulatory bodies breaking into students' life. The campaign demonstrates that visual activism on campus is not an organic movement of student awareness raising, but rather a strategy of coercion. Universities pressured to implement monitoring mechanisms to ensure strict regulatory compliance under threat of losing research funding and financial support, pass that same coercion on to the student body through a punitive aesthetic distinguished as just visual culture. Moving into the digital environment, unlike the physical posters which draw on just or chemistry language, the portal's design is strictly bureaucratic and punitive. Its main navigation is structured around the verbs of command and oversight, such as field undertaking, highest compliance, and register complaint. There's no space dedicated to emotional support for victims. The website instead operates as an electronic database designed to log offenders, store complaints, and measure institutional effectiveness. Notably, its important notices section features the public display of sanctions imposed on universities, functioning as a form of digital pillory for institutions that fail to submit to state control. There is a banner that offers the download of a document called Anti-Raging Day and Week Official Notice. Shows that the presence of posters and campaigns of Kerala campus is not a spontaneous phenomenon. The UGC ordered the compulsory observance of an anti-raging day and week in August 2025. The document specifically instructs institutions to undertake activities such as inaugural ceremonies, poster creation, lager competition, and the installation of campus selfie corners. More significantly, universities are required to submit an action-taken report through a dedicated link on the official website to demonstrate their participation. This confirms, from a discursive analytic standpoint, that university visual activism is, in effect, an act of performative compliance carried out to satisfy government auditors. There is another document in the website which is called the Show Cause Notice to 89 Universities, issued in June 2025. This notice was addressed to 89 universities whose names are published, listed, that had failed to submit the mandatory students' undertakings or institutional compliance reports. The document adopts a tone of severe warning because it says immediate action required, and lists devastating penalties for non-compliant institutions, including the withdrawal of UGC funds and grants, public disclosure of their non-compliance on the website, and the possible withdrawal of academic affiliation. Finally, I want to conclude that far from being an empathetic awareness practice, the anti-raging campaign on the campus in Kerala shows a punitive deterrence mechanism disguised as youth activism. The style of the posters is similar to the one used in comics, displaying colloquial language. However, the main discourse is articulated through the idea of fear, which gives visibility to the academic and legal consequences for the aggressor, such as suspension, expulsion, or a professional ruin. This confrontational discourse reflects a bureaucratic pressure imposed by the UGC, which demands compliance with its regulations. I hope that you have enjoyed and learned from this presentation, and if you have any questions, I'm more than glad to answer them in the comments. Thank you.